He had everything: a last name that opened doors, wealth that silenced doubts, and a future already carved in gold. But one decision stripped it all away. He put on a janitor's uniform. To him, it was just a disguise, a way to play a game. To others, it was all they saw. In that uniform, the Heir became invisible, disrespected, treated like less than human. And then, one man, the very janitor he thought he was imitating, showed him a truth that money could never buy. What lesson could possibly break an Heir's? Pride forever? Ethan was born into privilege. His family name was etched into buildings. His father's company employed thousands, and the world seemed to bend in his favor. From private schools to lavish vacations, life had always been a cushion of comfort. To him, the struggles of ordinary people were distant stories, things that happened to others, never to him. But Ethan carried something else, a restless pride. He believed he understood the world, believed money and power gave him perspective. That arrogance led to a bold idea, one he thought was harmless. He would step into another man's shoes just for a while. Not as a test of empathy, but as a game. When he pulled on the faded janitor's uniform, he expected amusement, maybe even adventure. What he didn't expect was the sudden shift in how the world saw him. Eyes that once looked up at him now looked down. Doors that always opened suddenly closed. Respect vanished. Yet the greatest challenge wasn't the humiliation of strangers. It was the quiet presence of one man, the black janitor who had walked in those same shoes his entire life. Ethan had no idea that their paths were about to collide, and that collision would shatter everything he thought he knew. The first hours felt like a joke. Ethan walked the halls of his father's hotel, sweeping floors, pushing carts, scrubbing smudges off glass. Guests who once smiled at him barely glanced his way. Some ignored him completely, as if he didn't exist. Others frowned, impatient, their voices sharp as they demanded things he'd never dreamed of doing for himself. At first, he smirked at the irony. So this is what it feels like to be ordinary, he thought. But then came the sting. A couple in designer clothes walked past him, whispering loud enough for him to hear, "Lazy staff. They don't even look like they belong here." Their eyes lingered, cold, as if his presence dirtied the space. Still, Ethan told himself it didn't matter. This was just a costume, a temporary game. But the longer he wore that uniform, the more invisible he became. And then came the moment he couldn't laugh off. Standing in the lobby, mop in hand, Ethan overheard two managers whispering about layoffs. Their voices dropped when they saw him. One narrowed his eyes and said, "You people should just be grateful to have jobs at all." Ethan froze. You people. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of words that cut deeper than any insult. But the worst blow came not from strangers, but from a confrontation he never expected. A guest accused him of stealing. The claim was absurd. He hadn't touched anything, but the manager didn't even ask for his side. He was grabbed by the arm, paraded across the lobby like a criminal, the guest's eyes burning into him. His protests were swallowed by silence. No one defended him. Not one. In that moment, humiliation turned into fear. If a simple accusation could strip him of dignity so quickly, what about the men and women who wore these uniforms every day? That was when the black janitor stepped forward. Silent, calm, but steady, he looked at Ethan, not with pity but with something sharper. His presence alone stopped the manager's tirade. His voice, low but firm, carried weight Ethan had never known. "Check the cameras," he said. Nothing more. No begging, no pleading. Just truth spoken with the confidence of someone who had fought battles like this too many times before. The evidence proved Ethan innocent, but the damage was already done. The sting of shame, the burn of judgment, It clung to him like the uniform itself. And as Ethan stood there, shaken and raw, he realized this was no game anymore, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't an heir. He was just another janitor, and the lesson was only beginning. The breaking point came on a night when the lobby was packed, glittering with chandeliers and polished marble floors. Ethan, still in his uniform, carried a bucket past a group of wealthy guests. He barely noticed their laughter until one voice sliced through the air. "Careful with the silverware. Don't want the help walking off with it." The words struck like a whip, and suddenly all eyes turned toward him. The room went quiet, waiting. The manager stepped forward, frowning. "We've had complaints," he said coldly. "Hand over. Your pockets." Ethan froze. A rush of heat surged through his chest. He wanted to shout his name, to scream that he didn't belong in this uniform, that he was the heir to the very empire these people worshipped. But in that instant, he saw the faces around him. Not one held doubt. Not one questioned the accusation. To them, the uniform defined him. Nothing more. Nothing less. Rough hands patted him down, right there in the open. Laughter from one corner, murmurs from another. The sting of humiliation burrowed deeper with every second, and then his eyes found the black janitor, standing silently nearby. Their gaze locked. In that silence, Ethan saw it. This wasn't new. This wasn't shocking. For the janitor, this was routine, an old, bitter wound reopened daily. The search turned up nothing. Of course, it didn't, but the damage was done. Ethan's pride shattered, his chest hollow. For the first time in his life, he knew what it meant to be judged, stripped, and discarded without proof. And in that moment, standing under the glare of chandeliers and suspicion, one question gripped him like iron. If a single night in a janitor's uniform could break him this deeply, how? Did a man survive a lifetime of it? The next morning, Ethan took off the janitor's uniform for the last time. The fabric felt heavier than gold, weighed down not by dirt or sweat, but by the truth it carried. He folded it slowly, almost reverently, as if he knew it didn't belong to him. Not really. He had borrowed an experience, stepped into a struggle, and what he felt in a single night was only a shadow of what others endured for a lifetime. He found the black janitor in the quiet of the early morning, polishing the same marble floors. Ethan once thought he owned. For the first time, Ethan didn't see a uniform. He saw a man, steady, resilient, carved by years of battles no one applauded. Ethan wanted to apologize, to thank him, to say something that could bridge the gulf between privilege and pain. But words felt too small. The janitor didn't need gratitude. What he needed was recognition. What he deserved was respect. Ethan left that hotel with more than shame. He carried a new awareness, one he couldn't ignore. He realized how fragile dignity becomes when judged by color or clothing, how quickly humanity can be erased when prejudice holds the pen. And while Ethan could take off the uniform, the janitor never could. That was the lesson. That was the truth. Because this story wasn't just about a privileged heir. It was about a system that still decides worth by appearance, race, and status. A system millions wake up to every day. So the question lingers, heavy and urgent. How? Many more lives, how many more humiliations, before we finally see each other for who we truly are, human?